Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Every Rockie Ever, a Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Rocky Mountain Rooftop Network, part of the Fans First Sports Network. As always, I am your host, Skyler Timmins, joined here by my older brother, Dustin, wearing all camo.
Where you can't even see me.
Yes, it's just a floating head. But we're took a week off last week. Now we're back in action here as we get closer to Thanksgiving break and everything. But we trying to figure out, looking through players, and this two pitchers that, instrumental parts of that 2009 team, but just some good pitchers, solid pitchers for the Rockies that weren't here for very long, Dustin, which were just right before we recorded. These guys weren't around for very long with the Rockies, and Jason Marquis and Jason Hammel.
Yeah, I was really surprised at the Jason Marquis. I thought we had him for at least a couple of seasons, but it was just that 2009 season where he was an all-star, and it was a good year. And then Jason Hammel there for 3 years. Looking back, man, that was just a quick thing, because he had a very lengthy career after the Rockies. And I think when we're thinking of this 2023 Rockies and looking ahead, how can we get back to finding those kind of pitchers, or picking up a guy, Jason Marquis, and having a good year? We just wish they could have hung on to him and had some more success. But what can they do? Learn from the past, from these type of pitchers that were able to make some adjustments and have some success in purple pinstripes.
Yeah, we look at the Rockies and their efforts to try and trade for pitching, sign pitching, and these two guys are examples of trading for pitchers. That have already been in the big leagues for a little bit. Hammel had been around for a little bit. Marquis had been around for a while, and they make a trade for guys that have already been around, have that experience, aren't rookies, and they bring them over, and immediately they find a spot in their rotations and are successful. And so it's going to be fun to kind of talk about these guys and reminisce about them. And I think first we'll start with arguably the ace of that, one of the aces of that 2009 staff that went to the postseason in Jason Marquis. So Dustin's got his numbers. Take it away.
Jason Marquis batted lefty, but pitched righty, and from New York. He was drafted by the Braves in the '96 amateur draft. That was straight out of high school, and he ended up making his major league debut in the year 2000, and played his last game in 2015 against the Rockies. And I remember him as 21, Jamie Wright number, but Jason Marquis represented it pretty well. He played for the Rockies for 3 seasons. For the 1 season in 2009, was an all-star, and we'll get into all that. He played for Atlanta, St. Louis, Chicago Cubs, the Rockies, and they offered him arbitration. He takes a deal with the Washington Nationals, then went to Arizona, Minnesota, San Diego, and finished his career with Cincinnati. But that was his career. 16 years in the bigs.
Yeah, it's you looking at his career. Like, man, this guy he had a good career, a good solid career over the course of all those years with all these different teams of not a superstar pitcher, but then you look at his numbers and the teams he was on and the success he had. It's just kind of one of those good, reliable, solid starters. Where you're like, man, why didn't anybody keep him around for years and years, he just kind of bounced around, especially there at the end.
Yeah, and the I miss the days that the pitchers could hit,
Hmm.
because I remember Jason Marquis, being a guy that could handle the stick a little bit. Plus, he won a Silver Slugger award when in his career when he was with St. Louis. But again, looking at his numbers for his career, 124 wins, 118 losses. Anytime you're above 500 in a record, it's not too bad. Um, in that year with and he had some solid. He was an innings eater in his time with St. Louis, then with the Cubs, and he came to Colorado and set a record mark in innings pitched,
Hmm.
which is crazy. It's so crazy looking at these numbers. That was in 2009, and here in the last few seasons of the Rockies, it feels like we haven't had any pitchers get to 150 innings pitched.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
and
a guy that would grind. That's something I think. This mentality, I always think of Jason Marquis, this bulldog mentality. He didn't blow people away, but he could work and work in the ground balls. And we know in those 2007, 2008, 2009, get the ground ball. The Gold Glove infield's going to take care of the ball.
hmm yeah, and he took it
That
full
success.
advantage of that. Took full advantage of that coming over to Colorado. It's like they acquired him from the Cubs. Must have been the Cubs.
Yep.
They acquired him over for Luis Vizcaino. Acquired him for that, and Dan O'Dowd at the time said, "We like Marquis' athleticism, age, and durability. He was going to be 30 years old." Like you said, he was an innings eater, going to be a reliable, durable starter in that rotation. And looking up information, looks like he had messed with his delivery, tweaked his delivery a little more to improve his release point. He was extending his stride off the mound and giving him a little bit more balance over the rubber and just kind of allowing his body to catch up and everything, helping result in a longer stride and throw the ball downhill more. And that ended up in having more ground balls. I think he was second in the league that year in ground balls or like ground ball outs, somewhere there. He was top of the marks in a lot of those things. But he was reaping the benefits from, we just caught him at the right time of he had made some personal changes in his in his mechanics, and then the Rockies reaped those benefits, and he just took off. That season was a key factor throughout the year and helped him get to that postseason.
And I think we're doing our research on Jason Marquis and Jason Hammel, a name that keeps popping up for me is their one of their old pitching coaches, Jim Wright.
Uh-huh.
And the work what he did when we look back at those rotations and seeing those guys, yeah, we had Ubaldo that was a kind of a one of a kind talent for the time we had him. And then we kind of, you know, patched it together with a Jason Marquis and Jason Hammel and these guys that competed. It says that they didn't, maybe they weren't having as much as success in the place they came prior, and with the Rockies making some adjustments to utilize their strengths, getting those ground balls, and boom, an all-star.
Uh-huh.
Jason Marquis in that 2009 season.
Yeah, Jim Wright working as that bullpen coach from 2009 to 2012, and it's just cool to see. It's always nice when you can see a guy come to Colorado as a pitcher and find success because we're used to the opposite of they come and this is where they come to die. Pitching comes to die. But it was nice to see a guy like Marquis coming in and just dominating, named to the All-Star team that season, which we're not used to that. There's very few all-star pitchers in Rockies history, and he was one of the few starters. What seems like was he just the second starting pitcher? I want to say that's what it seems like, something like that. One of those few, because Aaron Cook and then Jason Marquis is the starting pitchers, and then you have Ubaldo Herman later on. But for him to come in his first season and just turn heads like he did, it was fun to watch him pitch.
Yeah, and when we look at some of those key moments of Jason Marquis, his game on June 30th, and he had a 2-hit, no walk, 17 ground ball out, 86 pitch shutout. And speaking of Aaron Cook, that's an Aaron Cook game right there.
Mm-hmm.
An 86 pitch shutout with 17 ground balls. Which is, anytime the Rockies do something like that, that's what we want. He then gets called to announced as an all-star, and what does he do the next day against the Dodgers? Or he followed this, that shutout with that the first one was against the Dodgers. Yes. And then he goes and pitches 8 shutout innings, 1-0 victory over the Nationals. And at the time, that was the major league leading 11th win before the All-Star game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the few Rockies to win 11 games before the All-Star break. And the win isn't as significant as it was in the past, really, but it says a lot for a starting pitcher when they're going out and earning those wins and doing their parts. Looking in his game log from that season, so he made 33 starts that year, so awesome. And I believe out of those starts, 21 of them were quality starts. So 6 innings, 3 runs or less. And so he had 21 of those. 16 of those starts, he went at least 7 innings. He had 2 complete games. He had several starts where he went 8 innings. And he was just going out there and eating innings and being effective. There was only 4 outings that whole year where he didn't complete 5 full innings. Just 4 games.
Well, we talked about efficiency. In that year, he had the 3rd lowest in pitches per plate appearance, 3.53. He had the 4th lowest in pitches per inning. That was 15. Holy cow. That is efficient. There is your solution to having success as a Colorado Rocky pitcher. Don't walk people and don't nibble. Execute your pitches, work down in the zone, and Jason Marquis figured it out in that one season. So when we're talking, when I think of who could we look at and compare, and where do we think we can get that kind of production? Look at it comparing to a Jason Marquis.
Mm-hmm.
And try to get them. I think this year a Chase Anderson almost could fit that.
Yeah.
And but it's just astonishing how good a season that 2009 was for Jason Marquis.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, it was a career year in a lot of aspects. And there were some bad outings in there, and that kind of inflated. But he's better than what some of the ERA and stuff show. He was much better than that. On the mound, and yeah, it's that example of what could be successful. It's not necessarily him, inducing all the ground balls and pitching down in the zone, but it's like you said, limiting walks, attacking and executing with his pitches. No, he's not nibbling and trying to walk guys. No, he's coming. He was coming after guys and inducing rub. That's just how he was pitching. That was his repertoire, his arsenal. And it's not so much like you don't take like an Aaron Cook and Jason Marquis, you don't try to replicate what they're throwing, what they're who they are as a pitcher, but the philosophy behind their pitching. Work quick, throw strikes. What happens, happens. They put the ball in play, great. If you if you get a strikeout, wonderful. Coming after guys to find success, and it's a shame. It would have been nice maybe to have him around for a couple more years, just with what happened with that rotation. Like, man, they probably could have used him in 2010, where they kind of faltered off at the end and everything, when they could have probably made it back to the postseason again. But you miss out on him, and then we enter a dark period of Rockies pitching.
Yeah, we don't like to remember that one.
But before we break for the next guy, like you said, he was a silver slugger, so we should touch on his hitting a little bit and just how he did over his career. But one last thing I want to touch on. Pretty good at Coors Field, 3.92 ERA at home. You always wonder about that sub-4 ERA at Coors Field. We'll take it.
Most
Always
definitely.
Good. But overall, with his standard batting that year, at 75 plate appearances, wasn't his best year hitting, but not too shabby. A 172 batting average. Had a 219 slugging, 197 on base. How many? He got 9 sack bunts down, most of his career. So, congrats to him. Yeah, it's just 11 hits. He had 3 doubles that year and 8 RBIs. So, not too shabby.
And that's what's surprising. Looking at that, he didn't have a home run, and you would have thought, a guy that could swing the bat a little bit, that he would have, channeled in his inner Mike Hampton. But
he had 2 home runs in 2008 with the Cubs, so he used them all up at Wrigley.
He must have.
Yeah, and we have to mention one of the few pitchers to pitch in the postseason. How did he do? Well, he pitched just the one game in the NLDS against the Phillies. No, that's his postseason batting. He went hitless, but he had only tossed 1 inning in 2009. Yeah, finished a game. Came in to finish out a game, 1 inning, gave up 1 hit. Nothing else. It's crazy. He didn't start a game?
Well, that wasn't that series against the Phillies a pretty quick one.
Yeah, it would have been just 3 games. But man, he's one of your best pitchers and he doesn't start one of the games? Weird.
Well, that sounds like the Rockies, though.
Yeah. Jason Hammel, we'll get into it, but Jason Hammel started one of those games. Weird. But yeah, Jason Marquis, one of those underrated, maybe forgotten Rockies a lot of the time, but 2009 season was a lot of fun. He was a fun one to pitch, fun one to watch pitch, just for a lot of the things that we mentioned.
Yep. And he'll be always, for me, he was one of those guys that got away.
Yeah. Especially at 30 years old. Like, you could have kept him for 1 or 2 more years at least.
Yeah, at least a couple, because he went on and played 2 seasons with the Nationals, a year with, he got hurt there with Arizona, and then he tried to make his way back. He was, finishing out his career. He never got back to, with I guess maybe so the Rockies used up all that was left in him, and he didn't have his, not nearly as many innings pitched as he was used to, but he's in there on our list.
Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, we'll always have the hype video that the Nationals had announcing that they had signed Jason Marquis. It's a very funny video. If you've never seen it, go look up the Nationals hype video announcing, like, yeah, he could have gone anywhere, but he came here.
So,
It's a very cheesy.
no.
It's a very 2010s commercial. But moving right along here to our next guy here on our list here, another Jason, another pitcher there in that 2009 team. He stuck around for a couple more years in Jason Hammel, one of my personal favorites. I always liked Jason Hammel. But what's the rundown on one Mr. Hammel?
All right. Jason Hammel, who wore number 46 with the Rockies, right-handed pitcher from Greenville, South Carolina. He had a kind of an interesting draft history. Drafted by the Mariners in the 23rd round in 2000, but didn't sign. Then got drafted by the Devil Rays in the 19th round of the 2001 draft, and then again Tampa Bay in 2002, and that's where he went off and made his major league debut in 2006 as a 23-year-old, and ended up playing his last game in 2018. Played for the Rockies for 3 seasons from 2009 to 2011. He came over to Colorado during a trade in 2009 when the Rockies traded a pitching prospect of Yuri Rodriguez to the Devil Rays and brought over Jason Hammel. And he played for the Rockies. Then he was traded to Baltimore with Matt Lindstrom, where they got Jeremy Guthrie, and then played for the Cubs, went over to Oakland, back to the Cubs, and finished his career out with the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah. Interesting career. He's got a World Series ring in there with probably one of the most historic World Series winning teams there in 2016. But this one was always tough for me. I was always kind of sad when he got traded away after that 2011 season because I liked Jason Hammel. Well, he wasn't a big flashy pitcher, but there was always just something about him where every time he was on the mound, I'm like, we're going to be okay. We're going to get a solid outing out of this guy. He's going to give us a chance to win. I don't know whether
him and that goatee of his.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I remember. He kind of has the little bit bigger ears and then the goatee on his chin. But there was always something about he's kind of a taller, lankier guy, and something we both relate to, kind of being tall, lanky kids growing up. And it's fun to watch a guy like that pitching because you're like, hey, I kind of move like that guy. He's got these big, long limbs. That's how I can pitch. But he was one of those guys I always liked watching pitch. And I don't know if people would probably disagree. And you see things, looking up research, old articles from the archives from former folks at Purple Row, writing kind of things like weren't that high on Jason Hammel. But he's just one of those guys I really thought was a good pitcher that I just loved watching because I had all the confidence in the world for him.
Yeah, that's what's funny as we go through. There's some of these guys statistically that weren't the best, but that doesn't matter. This whole show is about remembering them and how they made an impact on us personally. And so for you, this Jason Hammel, where you could relate to him, and he did. I just always remember there'd be either, hey, this guy's got it working, and then other times like just throw a strike, man.
Uh-huh.
Like you see these highs and lows of Jason Hammel, and he was one that we talked about before is Jim Wright making a big impact on him. That's one of the things that maybe I thought is, this guy seems mentally it's all over the place. getting that muscle was just pitch, man. Just repeat that same. You did good, so repeat it. Um, but because I remember when he came over from the Rays, they're like, this younger guy, this prospect that he's got potential, and those are the days of the was it Dylan Dan O'Dowd,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't give up anything really for him, and plug him in. He makes that transition back to a starter, and he plugged up that a number 4-5 starter for the Rockies,
Mm-hmm.
and he won 27 games with them in those 3 seasons, which I think is pretty impressive. And once again, he ate up innings.
Mm-hmm.
176, 177, 170. Staying healthy, making your 30 plus starts. He had 34 starts, 30 starts, 30 or 8 games. Uh, 30 starts, 30 starts, and 27. That's pretty solid.
Yeah. No, I think looking at his stats and everything, even more is like, yeah, he wasn't going to be a lights out pitcher, but he was going to give you some length for the most part. Majority of the time, he's going to go out there and give you 5-6 innings. No, maybe he's giving up 3 or 4 runs, but with those a little bit more high-powered offenses, you would take that back then because those offenses were still pretty good. You had a Carlos Gonzalez, a Troy Tulowitzki in your lineup, and Todd Helton's still in there, and a lot of these other younger guys getting mixed in there. You had some good offenses, and so that kind of made up for. You'd take a Jason Hammel 6 inning, 4 runs allowed, like, hey, we're in this. We're only down by 2 runs, type of thing mentality, instead of sometimes when he'd go out there and last 3 innings and give up 6 runs, and you're like, but even then, you're like, oh, the offense can find a way to come back, hopefully.
Yeah, that.
It's not like today where we're down by 2 runs and it feel like it's over.
Oh, that's man. It's crazy because it doesn't seem like Jason Hammel was with the Rockies that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we're in 2023, sheesh, 12 years ago, and how much things have changed. He's one of these former Rockies that went on, and he was never the big time ace. He wasn't with Baltimore. He just pitched up some innings, went to Chicago, and kind of the same stuff. He found a little, these niches where they really needed him,
Uh-huh.
and where he could have some success, and had some really solid years after with Chicago and Oakland, and then when he went to the Royals, he just ate up a bunch of innings.
Yeah. He was Jordan Lyles for the Royals before Jordan Lyles came to pitch for the Royals these last
Yep.
couple of years. But back in 2021, this was the day after Christmas. I wrote an article on Purple Row, Rockies pitchers you probably forgot about, and Jason Hammel was on this list. And what I wrote is his ability to throw strikes and limit walks and other damage were instrumental to his success. His 4.07 FIP, his fielding independent pitching, ranks as the 4th best in franchise history. So you take away a lot of just him as a pitcher, him pitching a 4.07 FIP, pretty decent. Falls in line with things. His his WAR, according to Baseball Reference, is the 2nd best mark of his career at 4.4 during his time with the Rockies, behind his time with the Chicago Cubs. He was better on the road than at home, but even at Coors Field, like we said, he gave the Rockies a fighting chance. to win ball games. And then they decided to trade him after that because in 2011, near the end of the season, he got demoted to the bullpen because I think he kind of started to struggle with his command and effectiveness. And so they sent him to the bullpen where he had to work on finding that fastball. So Jim Wright out there in that bullpen helps him kind of work through, like you mentioned, that maybe the mental hurdles to get back to prevent any further yips from showing up. Works on his fastball, and he expressed confidence that he was in a better space, a better mental space with everything, and he was more confident in his ability to pitch. Fortunately, the Rockies didn't want to take that chance, I guess, and decided to try and get a veteran innings eater in Jeremy Guthrie, which unfortunately didn't work out very well.
Not at all.
But it's just sad to see that it feels like they kind of gave up on him too quickly. By that 2011, because Jason Hammel in 2012, maybe he helps right the ship. Maybe we don't have to go to a 75 pitch limit on 4-man rotation. You have Jason Hammel's there to eat innings for you. He can go 6 innings. They may not always be the cleanest innings, but he's going to give you a chance to win the ball game. And I think that's what it came from. Or I remember looking those game logs. I remember him being better than he was statistically, but it may be just that confidence of watching him pitch and go deep into ball games. Because if a starter can go 6 innings, I'll take that every time. Give me 6 innings, save my bullpen, and give us a chance to win the game. Don't get blown out. But I think he was a typical, I guess, was often affected by a typical Rockies problem of one bad inning type of thing.
And it brings up some points on talking about the Rockies and what's the mental fortitude that it takes to pitch at Coors and trying to see how these guys are so effective at Coors. These guys that have had some good numbers at Coors, and trying to find, what's that mental strength coach doing? Is there one anymore? And how do pitchers deal with it? Because like I said, that's one of them, and I think something too is very hard is a pitcher. In my experience, I started out a season and I was 7-0 starting, doing, felt I was doing all right, and then I had 3 straight no decisions. Went out of the game with the lead. The same lefty reliever came in those 3 games and blew the lead. So I got 3. So instead of going 10-0 in the league, 7-0 with 3 no decisions, and I get demoted to the bullpen. And it's hard, especially when you're grinding as a starter, because it's a whole different mentality. And they go to the bullpen, and it's like, come on, man! Like, how am I going to get better now? And I see that when these guys are bouncing around, and the Rockies do it a lot, where I think the worst for me to be a pitcher would be stuck in long relief, being that long reliever. Oh, terrible, because it feels like you never play, and when you do, the game's already out of hand, or it's that, we needed a starter, so here you go, on that Sunday series or whatever. And so I understand and see how Jason Hammel kind of went through that in his career as a starter, and then okay, go to the bullpen. It's like, well, sheesh, man, it's tough. But he got to do it in the pros. He did it in the major leagues. So I guess I wouldn't complain too much. I was just doing it at JUCO ball,
Yeah.
But seeing the stuff that how they go through and just that process, that daily grind. And Jason Hammel was one of those guys that for those 3 years that did just that.
Hmm. Yeah, and what are those? Just a solid pitcher, like the type of guy you want in the back end of your rotation. Even a 3, 4, 5 type of pitcher. He's going to go out there and give you, most of the time, he's going to give you a decent start. It's probably not going to be always the best start, but it's going to be a decent one. He's going to pick up the team, do what he can to compete, save your bullpen. He'll give you some length and give you options going forward and give you an option to win the game. Like, even didn't work out as well. He did pitch the one game in the postseason in 2009 against the Phillies. Pitched 3 2/3 innings, gave up 4 runs on 4 hits, including a home run. You could probably tell some of maybe the environment of being in your first postseason game, and walked 3 guys, had 3 strikeouts or had 5 strikeouts, but walked 3 batters, gave up the home run. So 4 run, but still not too shabby. And then goes on, has some pretty good outings in the postseason. 2012 with the Orioles in the division series against the Yankees. Tosses 11 1/3 innings, gives up just 4 runs in 2 games. Does some other stuff throughout, but not too shabby of a career for Jason Hammel. I was always happy to see him have that success elsewhere when he was doing things.
Oh yeah, and he's one of those guys that kind of like, man, it's too bad. We've had ex Rockies that were like, oh, they couldn't have got rid of that guy soon enough, but the couple that we talked about today was, or a couple of solid starting pitchers that post Rockies career, it was like, and I was glad when you were doing good, and whenever the Rockies played against them, I wanted to pound them, but having them find success or do things, and knowing that being part of the Rockies is part of their career path, their history, they're part of our group is all right.
Yeah.
They go to the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I will not accept that.
Just before we wrap up here, standard batting for Jason Marquis, or for Jason Hammel in his Rockies career, had a 120 average, 158 slugging, 142 on base. He did have 22 sacrifice hits, 22 sack bunts, more than any other portion of his career, mostly because he spent 3 years here. And guys were always on base. That's what was nice. You'd have a 8-hole. You'd have Chris Iannetta in the 8-hole or something getting on
Yeah,
base.
that's what I'm saying. That there were guys getting on. We can't say that anymore.
But 184 plate appearances. He had 19 hits. He had 3 doubles, 6 RBIs, 69 strikeouts to 4 walks. And he did have a home run in 2011 for the Rockies. First
See,
and only home run of his career.
I relate a lot to Jason Hammel. He's 6'6", I 6'5", and hitting. Once the ball started coming fast, my hitting just boom. So I relate a lot to Jason Hammel.
He had a double in each of his 3 years with the Rockies. So
Yes,
there
sir.
you go, his annual double.
Hit those. Yeah, I was a little better than that, but
He had 6 hits in 2009, 6 hits in 2010, 7 hits in 2011.
dang, that's crazy.
A lot of strikeouts each year, though. He only had 15 strikeouts in 2011. Good for
That's
him.
crazy to. It's crazy to think because it seems like so long ago that pitchers actually got to hit when it was
Yeah.
only 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, 2021.
Yeah, we think of Herman Marquez being able to rock the ball, but like, sheesh, man, it's crazy. I think it's like it never changed because the Rockies 9-hole hitter has not been able to
Yeah, it
do
feels like we still
anything.
have one.
So we still have one. Sheesh.
Or it feels like we have a couple of pitchers hitting in the lineup sometimes.
Real.
Just throw Armand's let Armand DH since he can't pitch. Let him DH in 2024.
He could do a little Bryce Harper. A little Shohei. Sheesh.
Yeah, that's what Shohei's going to be doing next year. So
In purple
Yeah.
pinstripes, right?
wouldn't that be an episode of Every Rockie Ever?
Oh man. That'd be nuts.
Oh goodness, paying him $70 million to come play one season in Colorado. Oh well, but yeah, two guys that solid, good pitchers that were personal favorites. I think there's a lot of fans out there that have that same kind of thing of like, yeah, I remember I liked those guys. Good pitchers, maybe not the greatest, but they had good moments with the Rockies, and types of pitchers the Rockies could always use more of. Just solid innings eaters that can plug into that rotation.
Stay healthy and eat the innings, and even Jason Hammel's ERA being that 4-5 starter, an ERA hanging around, it was mid to low 4, and that's for Rockies pitching that gets the job done.
Yeah,
it really should.
Yeah, it should, and then it puts a focus on and then our bullpen needs to be able to hold that, and our offense just needs to be really good. But that's going to do it here for this edition of Every Rockie Ever. Always enjoy having you to join along with us as we reminisce about these players. I did see that Jason Marquis, at least in 2022, was helping in a collegiate summer league somewhere over there on the East Coast. So probably around where he lives, was able to come and be a coach in 2022 at least. Was he a player coach like Manny Corpus was? Probably not. But and then I'm not sure. I wasn't able to find much on Jason Hammel, what he's up to. But I'll keep looking. The dream would be even find these guys, get them on here. But as always, we appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter at Every Rockie Ever. That's ROCKY Every ROCKIE Ever. And over on Twitter, as well as the Rocky Mountain Rooftop, ROCKY MTN Rooftop over on Twitter. And you can follow me at sideline_crowd. Dustin's at Mr. T Spanish. Yeah, that's all the good stuff. That's all I can think of.
Yep, that's all that we got going on. We're just grinding with the off season now that the World Series is over. And for me, it's Avalanche season right now, following them and rooting for them and seeing what happens in the off-season moves for Major League Baseball.
And you can follow us over the Affected by Altitude podcast. That's a weekly one. We try to do this one every other week, so twice a month. But Affected by Altitude, you can typically a new episode every Monday on your favorite streaming platform or here on YouTube. And you can stay up to date. Evan Lang and I will be covering your Rockies news, happenings and goings, goofing off.
And not to mention all the pop culture references, video game references, impressions. You just get everything in those episodes.
Yes. Sometimes it's like a fever dream. No, we have fun over there, and you can also find us both. Find writing over at purplerow.com as well as fansfirstsports.com. I do a lot of writing over there. Not necessarily about the Rockies, but just about Major League Baseball in general, covering stuff. A lot of good time. So all the support fans can give us is greatly appreciated in helping the show grow and giving us an opportunity to keep doing this. But until next time, this has been Every Rockie Ever. I'm Skyler. That's Dustin. Until next time.
So long.
Farewell.